Deepseek is open source, but what's going on inside of the model is, of course, still a black box.
Specifically, what Sam Altman said is European launch will take a while.
There's been a call from France to stop the Europeans' continuous creation of legislation. ArcAGI was a test device to be the hardest test for AI ever created. O3 is already scoring over 80%, which is crazy. The pricing of this model is like 100 times cheaper. People that wrote books on AI are falling for this trap of human exceptionalism. It's also the announcement of a second Cold War.
The on craze, it's fully on. Yeah.
Good morning, Night City.
Good morning, buddy. How is life with you?
Yeah, life is very good with me. The winter blues is passing. Been swimming in the ice cold water of Het IJ in Amsterdam this weekend. And today we have a very special day because we're going to do an amazing Innovation Network dinner with Salesforce.
Exactly. So, yeah. And it's completely packed. The restaurant needed to move some additional tables to accommodate everybody. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I understand that you have also going to talk a little bit more about agents. And I think it's quite on topic what we have to discuss today as well, because in the past 2 weeks, a lot of new agent functionality has been released, right?
I've been thinking, of course, every year I need to make some changes to my keynote or kind of, rehash some things, because there's some events I go to that I repeat and you don't want to do the same story over and over again. But I was thinking about the new name because I've been running with the coming wave now for over a year, of course. And then before that, it was something with the metaverse.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, what am I going to call it? And Agents of Change, I like. I'm not decided yet. The other one I have is actually stolen from Dune Prophecy, the series. It's The Age of Thinking Machines. And I really like that one because thinking machines says that we are going to build machines that can think, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're conscious yet or that they are human, right? Thinking machines. And I kind of like where that goes. So anyway, won't go too much off topic, but
Yeah. That was another fun fact is that, so we speak each other every 2 weeks, right? So we make notes for interesting topics.
We talk to each other every day, but
yeah. This newsletter, of course, every 2 weeks. And 2 weeks ago, I made a note about OpenAI's, task functionality, right? So that you can make a note and then be reminded. And within even talking about it, they just a couple of days ago released Operator, which we don't even have to hear, but we saw so many videos. And one of our friends in our close network, Renier van Eyck, he has a pro account and he's been playing with it and has been sharing some videos. So we have some insights in what you can do with it. But maybe we just first start with what it is.
Yeah, so Operator is basically OpenAI's feature to autonomously perform tasks for you that include being on your computer or going online. So in a few weeks ago, Anthropic released computer use. Basically, Operator is a kind of computer use, but from what I've seen so far, because I didn't go as far as Rainier and make a brand new account in the United States through VPN, pay $200 to get to try it out, because that's basically the only way we can use it in Europe at this moment.
Right, yeah.
So what I saw from the videos is that to do it, or the way Operator functions, is that it doesn't actually operate your PC. Everything it does, it opens basically like a sandbox version of things. Well, maybe sandbox, not the right term, but it creates a kind of mini browser inside of the ChatGPT app, which is a limited edition kind of Microsoft Edge, I'm guessing, which is basically Chromium. And that's what it uses to operate things. So there's some obvious restrictions to that. For example, if you're using an account for a certain website, like for example, like me, I use booking.com. I have an account. It is Genius Level 3, which gives me special discounts. I haven't been able to try this out. And so if anybody watching this or listening to this has experience, please leave it in the comments. Correct us. I would love to ask Rainier because I didn't think about it before. But as far as I can tell, you can't actually, you would have to ask it separately to log into your account first, which means you would have to give ChatGPT, the app, your password and everything, because it can't just use like a Bitwarden app extension in your browser or things like that. So just not exactly sure.
No, they deliberately
all,
stay away from the passwords. They don't log in on your behalf. So they would use
exactly.
general booking.com as an anonymous user to find your trip in that way. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I've seen. So the thing is that it's a gadget. It's nice. It's cool. It's definitely a sign of where things are headed. It is a higher level of autonomy for these AI, that we interact with than we've seen before. But I would not call it a real agent yet, for the reason that there's some serious limitations of what it can and cannot do.
Interesting. So where do you think what's the difference between a real agent and what is this? Because what this does, let's stick with the booking example. We are about to trip a holiday, right? I cannot use it yet, but this is a nice use case to try play with it. So I also thinking about opening an account in the US and play with it. And I want a 3-week holiday to Tokyo. That is a lot of things to digest and to think of. How good will it be in organizing my entire trip? Feels to me, if that goes well, it's an agent. It's a job that I want to do myself, that I can, with one prompt, outsource to ChatGPT to do. That's an agency functionality. Why do you consider it not being an agency?
Oh, that's not what I said. I think that you made a nice example of what an agent is. My point is, this operator is not capable of doing that. Capable of doing it reliably. It's not capable of doing it outside of the ChatGPT app or window, right? So it's fully dependent on that. And that means that it's also fully dependent on the functionality that comes with that. And I've already seen that there are websites that, for example, don't interact with the ChatGPT app. So it doesn't work at all.
Yeah.
So it just seems like, it's definitely a step up. But an agent to me seems like either it's an AI integration in a certain software or in a tool that is capable of complete autonomous operation within that tool. So let's say that you have Salesforce, right? We have Salesforce dinner tonight. Let's say that you have Salesforce and there's an AI agent in there, and that AI agent within the Salesforce app can do anything that you would want or need to do as a employee. And it can access the files on your computer that it would require to do so. That would be an agent for me.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, again, I mean, this is something that's up for debate. I know some people might say, well, this is already an agent. Personally, I think that, yes, it's a step in the right direction, but no, we're not quite there yet. And in terms of functionality, I know Reinier was super excited because he said, you can give it a project to work on, and then you can open another one, and you can give it some work to do and open another one. From what I've seen, it's not quite that easy because you need to keep all of these browser windows open. Yeah.
Okay, but it's a step in the right direction, and as we discussed many times here during this newsletter, it goes super fast. So let's see how that goes. I have a list of limitations here. So indeed, it won't touch the payments or the logins. It also doesn't include any payments. If the interface becomes too complex, it gets stuck. It also cannot do any CAPTCHAs, which is, of course, pretty interesting. And specifically, what Sam Altman said is European launch will take a while. So here in Europe, again, we are stuck with ChatGPT tasks functionality to keep track of things that we want to automate, or of course do it with Zapier or NAN, what we already are using.
Well, a little nice side note here is that actually yesterday I saw that there's been a call from France to stop the Europeans' continuous creation of legislation, to put a halt on that, to find our way back to actually creating an environment that is inducive to innovation, so supports innovation.
Yeah.
So the French are starting to wake up to what the heck is going on, and they're starting to call for less push on legislation in Europe and more focus on how to create an environment where our citizens get the benefit of the new technologies and our businesses get the opportunity to actually innovate again. And I think that's a good thing.
I totally agree. And it was also one of our predictions, right, that we had two weeks ago where we did the predictions for 2025. Some way, somehow, we need to step up in Europe, and I think we will step up in Europe. But it will take some time. Anything more about...
One more note.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just 2 notes. Yeah. One, I have no idea why OpenAI bothered to release tasks 2 weeks ago. I still don't know what to do with it. I think it's a completely underwhelming feature. And on the back of that, I kind of feel like maybe they released Operator just because they didn't want Claude and Anthropic to kind of show them up with already, telling the world that they're working on this kind of autonomous agent technology. I don't know. It's a little bit of a question now these days. They seem to be rolling out models really quick, but they also seem to be rolling out features that are mostly focused on showing off where they're headed and what they'd like to do. Yeah.
Yeah, or as they usually package is, throwing it out there to learn from the behavior how people are using it and then use that. That is sensible, of course, as well. You need some consumer and user feedback to kind of work with that. But indeed, the tasks thing, I've been using it quite extensively to see what it can do and cannot do. But then you want an overview of your tasks. There's not even an overview thing of the tasks that you've put out, right? It's very limited.
Yeah.
So let's move to a completely different region of the world, because we talk a lot about OpenAI and the US, but meanwhile, everybody's raving about Deepseek 1 that has been released, that is outcompeting the O1 model and is also open source. And I know that you've been playing with it over the weekend. So what is what you're thinking about it?
So yeah, this is the interface for Deepseek. Don't want people to see that I've been researching Diablo builds this weekend, so I'm gonna close that. This is Deepseek. Deepseek, it looks and feels a lot like the ChatGPT browser interface. Notably, it doesn't have a voice mode. Notably, it doesn't have a whole lot of different models to work with, but the most important button is here. This is DeepThink R1 on or off. So if you just use Deepseek, it's comparable to ChatGPT 4.0, but DeepThink is comparable to OpenAI O1. And there's a few interesting things to mention. First of all, you might see this search button right here. When I click that, it introduces RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, meaning that it can search on the internet for answers. Now, notably, when we go to ChatGPT and we have 0.1 selected, search is turned off. It's unavailable, which means that if you ask O1 something, you're purely relying on its own knowledge plus whatever files you might be providing. And this is a notable difference from Deepseek R1 or DeepThink R1, because that can actually search the internet. And in my personal experience, this has made DeepThink my go-to AI for the last week, because it uses the reasoning skills that of a level of O1 combined with what it finds online, and that leads to a quality of answers that is significantly higher than ChatGPT 4.0 in my personal experience, and it's also significantly more useful than 0.1, because 0.1 is always like talking and then it's like 5 months behind because it has a data cutoff point. So
I completely agree with that, because now we're talking about R1, because everybody's raving about R1, but Deepseek was already, of course, available in the V3 version. I've been using it quite extensively in the past months, actually, and the answers that it gives, it's quite extensive, and it is just a very pleasant way to talk to, right? I really like the engagement and the type of answers that it gives, and the way that it kind of pulls you in to ask further questions. Sit a little bit between Perplexity and OpenAI. With Perplexity, you always have this automatic question that you want to follow up, and this is also enticing you to kind of keep on chatting with it.
Yep.
And one thing I just wanted to say that, so we just mentioned the price tag and the difficulty to get to the model of one with operator. This is free, right? This is a free open source model that everybody can install, and many people have done that already and are showing some amazing use cases. So one of the influencers that we follow is Riley Brown, and he built a complete Perplexity based on this model within a day. Oh, there we go.
Okay, well, yeah, this is funny. So I haven't had this before. Literally all week this didn't happen, and now it happens. But to answer your question, so there's multiple interesting facts about DeepThink and Deepseek. One, it's completely free. You don't need a subscription at this point. And that's beneficial in terms of price. But also the price per token, if you would use the API, is an order of magnitude, 2 orders of magnitude lower than OpenAI. Yeah. It's really quite incredible. Like the pricing of this model is like 100 times cheaper, both on the input and the output tokens. So of course the thing is, it's from China, and so by definition, in the West, a lot of people will be prejudiced against it because they will be very conscious of that they might be sharing data with China, whereas they would not be as conscious about that when they're sharing it with ChatGPT or OpenAI. And personally, I really don't think at this point that there's much difference. These are both two superpowers that definitely, in terms of us being European, no longer have our best interest at heart. So you could ask yourself, does it really matter? But I'll leave that to people.
You're saying something interesting here, right? I read this morning that it's the #1 app at the moment being downloaded in the US. So I have not read any statement about this being closed down or no access, because we have this whole discussion about TikTok. Is Elon going to buy TikTok? And TikTok is not allowed anymore in the US. So what about this then? If every American starts to have their personal life completely discussed in here with Deepseek, this is going to be closed down there as well. Well, I assume that's going to be, that seems logical, but it's open source.
I think that is the thing, DeepSeek is open source, between brackets, and so people probably don't think of it as a security hazard. But the thing that I've been discussing, technically, DeepSeek is open source. From a programmer perspective, you can see what it does, you can see the inputs and outputs, and you can see its actions. But what's going on inside of the model is, of course, still a black box, as it has been with pretty much every AI model. That's, we train these models, but once they're done, what's going on inside is pretty much a black box still, right? We haven't figured that out. We haven't fixed that. And so there could be stuff in the model in terms of how it's trained that we don't fully understand, and that down the road could potentially do things that we don't want it to, right? Maybe not right now. So this is something to consider. Like, the thing is, well, the point I want to make is that with open source software, traditionally, it's super transparent. You can see the code, you know what's going on. But with AI models, of course, there's some additional challenges there.
Yeah. So what have you looked up here? I wasn't paying attention to what you typed in.
No, so I just asked DeepThink, why is DeepThink capable of doing web search, but 01 from OpenAI isn't? And then at first, of course, it returned nothing because it was too busy. I redid the search, and now you see, so first of all, you see it thought for 17 seconds. So that's the reasoning. Then it comes up with an answer, and then at the bottom, the summary. The disparity arises from differences in feature prioritization, technical implementation, partnerships, and risk management between the two companies. So this just shows that 01 not being able to do web search has nothing to do with its capabilities. It's just that ChatGPT didn't turn that, or OpenAI didn't turn that on, right? Yeah. Here as well, there's two different. This is the previous answer when it failed. This is the second answer. It's everything's in line. The thing that's most interesting about DeepThink and DeepSeek is that it shows you its line of reasoning, right? It's chain of thought. It literally starts with, okay, so the user is asking why DeepSeek's DeepThink can, and let me break this down. So you can literally read what it was thinking all the way to the bottom, and then it formulates an answer. Now, although I like this, and what did you want to say?
I'm very curious to hear what I like this a lot. It's extensive when you want a short answer, but if you want to kind of follow the chain of thinking, it's interesting to follow that along, how it came to some certain conclusions. But you were just about to say something else. I'm curious what you wanted to say.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is that although this looks nice, and it has the effect of anthropomorphization, that means we experience the AI as more human, and therefore we have a better feeling about interacting with it. I really want to emphasize, and another thing, we know for a fact that asking a model to do this, which is actually part of the integrated features of these new reasoning models, they're basically always being asked by their own model to think step by step, right? Because we've proven that step-by-step thinking improves the process. But the fact is that the return we get, where we see what it's thinking, the truth is, it's nonsense, right? Because, like, what did I say? The model is a black box. So whether that is actually what it thought, whether that was actually the way it came to this model, we have absolutely no idea. This is what it says it is doing in its thinking.
Right.
This is not necessarily what is really going on inside the model.
I get that. But the interesting thing is that if I ask you something, why you made a cup of coffee this morning at a certain time frame, you're gonna reason it back in a similar way, thinking that it was a clear, rational decision, but you never know. So it's interesting how it calculates back from that, right? We do the same as humans. I don't know if it's exactly 100%. The same, but it looks the same. Let me put it like that.
100%, Patrick. You are nailing it. That's exactly the thing. So, I love that you bring this up, because people will say, well, it's a machine. We humans, right? Human exceptionalism. I've had a massive discussion even this weekend with people that wrote books on AI, that pretend to be super experts on LinkedIn, and they are falling for this trap of human exceptionalism. We humans are different. We humans are superior. The truth is 100%, like you said it, we also don't know how we come to our conclusions.
Right.
We are emotional beings. When we might looking at mathematics, right, or looking at engineering, we can reason step by step and understand why that works. But how we come to our answers in our brain, how we come to certain decisions, is something that we don't know.
It's a similar black
exactly
box.
the same. It's a similar black box. It's a similar black box. Yes. People think they understand themselves, and we think we know ourselves. But the fact that psychologists still make billions every year without ever, literally ever, curing a single person tells you all you need to know on that. Like, we have no idea what's going on here. It's absolutely a mystery. And so we're seeing exactly the same thing with AI. So that kind of gives me hope.
More about this model. I've been there's now suddenly a lot of videos online, and people are also questioning the guardrails of this, right? And there are some examples online. If you ask something that has to do with the history of China, it is kind of blocking it. Let's try it out. Can you ask something about, I don't know, a revolt in Hong Kong or something? Or
yeah, I just want to quickly show that one of the things I also like about it is how it responds, because here it answers my question about Diablo, and then it finishes up with a smiley, and it says always check your codecs for flexible upgrades. So it even gives you little tidbits of tips and questions that make it more enticing to interact with it. Another thing that I noticed is that it uses thinking, but also uses way more sources very often. Here you see 29 results. I had it use up to 41 different websites, which is significantly more than GPT-4o does.
This is an interesting catch you have here. I didn't notice that yet. And going back to our earlier conversation about the agent of OpenAI booking a trip for you, usually they go to a couple of websites. Even with Perplexity, it always comes up with the similar type of sources where they pull the information from. I like to see something like I've used 50 sources to get to the answer. So it's more broad and not going into the same bubble that I'm always using. I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason I'm asking this, I've been playing with this. I'm very curious what it comes up with now. They're changing things at the moment. I've tried to repeat a couple of these things and it didn't, and it gave me an answer now all of a sudden, which was earlier blocked. So I think they're going more open to prevent this from happening.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Okay, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
But let's just test this. So traditionally, over the last week, we've seen that whenever people ask questions about Tiananmen Square, basically Deepseek says, nothing's going on. There was even a really funny instance. So this is one of the funny X posts this week. Somebody asked hello, who did the Tiananmen Square? And no, I mean the Chinese government killed people there. And then it says, no, the Chinese government has never made mistakes. It has always been dedicated to its people, the people of China. It has never made any mistakes, And it just completely flipped the hell out. But let's give it a go here. So I am trying to trick it, right? I'm asking it about what Wikipedia says. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure how to approach this type of question. Let's chat about math, coding, and logic problems instead. Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's still not answering this question.
I thought this wasn't a funny one. What famous picture has a man with a grocery bags in front of a tank?
Oh my god, yeah. Everybody's trying to jailbreak this.
Same thing happens as with you. It starts to answer and then it goes back. And there are zillions of these kind of things, yeah.
So the interesting thing is that what I'm starting to think is that it's not actually the model itself that was trained that way, because it wants to answer. But I think that the filtering is actually afterwards in the app or whatever. Like as soon as it starts to see those particular keywords, it just completely blocks. It basically goes back on itself and it says, "Okay, stop answering." Yeah. So that raises the question, and this is something we could probably find out on X. But if people are running the open source version locally, can they get around that? And maybe they can, maybe they can't. It would be interesting to know.
Yeah, there were some jailbreaking cases already flying out there. So, yeah.
Now, the thing is that if it's not something that's done afterwards, so if it's not post-processing, right, but it's actually in the model itself also built-in guardrails, that could be detrimental. Because as Ilya Sutskever is formerly from OpenAI. He's the one that basically invented ChatGPT, and he's the world's leading scientist right now. And he's very explicitly in one of his keynotes, he said, when we put guardrails on AI to align them, their ability to reason and to be creatively think is negatively impacted.
That's like lobotomizing a human.
It's like lobotomizing a human. Yeah, the more we try to brainwash it to only give the answers that we want, the stupider it becomes. That's literally what's going on. Yeah. And this is a real challenge for AI alignment, because if we need to have a certain level of alignment if we want to ensure that it doesn't hurt humanity in the future, right? But we also already know that directly impacts our ability to create AI that is smarter, more creative, and intelligent than what we have right now.
Maybe it's good to also step just small into how come that these models are getting more smarter, right? We got O1, O3 is coming soon as well. It goes through the roof. Can you explain a little bit how that works with the basically the way that they calculate it post training and after usage, and that why the increase goes so quickly?
Yeah, of course. So before I answer, what do you mean by increase?
If you look, for instance, in the ARC rating, it's almost to 90%, and the ARC is some kind of test to see if we're reaching AGI. So a couple of months ago, people were saying, the models, there's no growth anymore. And now we see all these reasoning models coming out. And there's a significant growth because they can reason on the outcomes that they generate post-training data, basically.
So you're making a very, very interesting point. So first of all, unable to solve frontier math. So last year, a test was devised for reasoning models specifically, and that's the frontier math test. It's been made by some of the leading mathematicians in the world, and just for your understanding, it's like the hardest math test in the world, and the world's leading mathematicians can score somewhere between 70 and 80%, but none of them would score 100%, and they would need significant time to finish this test, right?
Right.
So for a world mathematician to score this, to make this, it might even take him days to finish the test. Yes?
Yeah.
Now, 01 scored a 1%. It's somewhere here. 01 preview. Actually, full 01 is not in this list. I didn't include it. Well, it scores 2%, I think. Maybe a little higher. But 03, which is not released yet, but which is the upcoming new model from OpenAI, scored 25%. So even though it didn't score on a human level yet, it's important to realize that it basically had an increase in its performance of 1150% improvement over what was possible with the previous best model.
Yeah, in weeks,
so
basically.
This is in weeks, in just a few months' time. Another test was the ARC AGI test, which, because there's a big problem in AI, and that's benchmarking. All the benchmarks that we had 2 years ago for artificial intelligence are useless at this point, because all the AIs that we've created basically score very high or completely out of the range of the benchmarks. So one of the challenges is for them to come up with new benchmarks to better test AI. Now, some fields like reasoning and math, that's not so hard because the AIs haven't actually saturated those tests yet. But on a broad level, if you want to include basically every field, every science, everything known to man, it is getting really hard, because ARC AGI was a test devised to be the hardest test for AI ever created, and it's supposed to last us at least a few years in terms of benchmarking AI. And if you look at this graph, what you see is literally it's going straight up in the air in a single year, in less than a year, right? So where 01 Pro is in the middle, and GPT-4o is all the way at the bottom at like 5%, I think. 03 is already scoring over 80%, which is crazy, because the best and the smartest human beings wouldn't score over like maybe 30% on this test. And the reason is that it covers so many different topics and fields, right? Even if you'd get the smartest people in the world, right, they would only be an expert at maybe 2 or 3 fields, meaning that they would score very low on all the other fields. And that's the thing here. And this is why AI is outperforming humans to such a significant margin in a test like this, and it scores extremely high. Now, you asked me, why is it that 01 Pro is doing so much better than, for example, 01 or GPT-4o? And it's not just the model itself, but like we discussed, or it has to do with the time it has to think. And this can lead us into the other topic, something that Jensen Huang also spent significant time on during the CES, the Consumer Electronics Expo this month. Oh, I thought you were going to...
No.
So the point here is that what we found with the newest reasoning models is that test time compute, that's what they're calling it, test time compute, is more impactful on the end results than the training of the model in terms of upscaling the data. So last year, people said, oh, we're hitting a brick wall with AI models because we're reaching the maximum amount of data that we can use to train them. And so we're seeing massive diminishing returns. And now what we found is that with the newest models, with the newest architecture, like the 0103 and also like DeepThink, is that the amount of data is far less impactful than the amount of time we give the models to think. So we're still improving our models, and we're definitely going to train new models. But when we give these same models a significantly more time to think,
Right.
they come to better answers. And that's funny because what did we talk about before? What other intelligent species has the same feature?
Is that humans?
Yeah, that's humans.
Yeah.
We do the same thing. If you give us more time to answer a question, we'll come up with better answers.
Right.
Right. So again, we're seeing this mirroring.
Is this all algorithm? Is this all smarter algorithms?
Can you clarify? I'm not sure I understand what you
So
want
to program the models in such a way that they have these results that you have there on the screen, how do you program the system to think through possible answers like a human? I assume that is some kind of algorithm that we think of, that smart people like is thinking about. Is that just an algorithm that they work on, or do you know that?
Well, algorithm might be a kind of a simplified term at this point, right? So one thing's for sure, these models are no longer really large. Well, so yeah, they're different models than large language models. So ChatGPT 3.5 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, they were all large language model transformers. Yes?
Yeah.
And that was a breakthrough. But these new models, these reasoning models, they're not really large language models anymore. They are still transformer models, from what I understand, but they have gone beyond just being large language models. This is also why Sam Altman is now already talking about potentially combining models, right?
Exactly.
So combining GPT-4o, and also advanced voice mode. A lot of people don't realize this, but advanced voice mode by OpenAI is basically a separate model. And by combining it with 4o, so it's basically you're interacting with two different AI models. One is being used to generate the answer and find the information, and then the other is being used to kind of generate the voice. And they have an integration, because at the very first version of the voice mode, it would basically listen to what you said, turn what you said into text, feed that to the model, then get a textual answer back and turn that into voice. But by integrating them further, it's directly voice to voice in, voice out. But you're still kind of working with two different models that are glued together. And Sam Altman is now already saying that we might expect that the reasoning models will be integrated with the voice models and the large language models, right, to create different. And I kind of look at this like the human brain is built from the limbic brain and the reptilian brain, right? We have these different parts of our brain that process information in different ways, and we combine that, right? So I think that's probably the best way to look at it. And in my personal view, the new reasoning models are basically the development of the prefrontal cortex.
Right. That makes a lot of sense if you explain it in that way. Yeah. And let's see how far that is going to continue, much further than we humans are capable of course. But I also heard that the R1 model from, what was it, Deepseek, they also using the NVIDIA chips, but they only have 10% of the amount of NVIDIA chips to get to the result. So they have a smarter model or algorithm, as I called it, to get to those results that we just saw, which resulted in that cheaper price that you mentioned earlier. So they continuously think of different ways of finding the right path to a future answer of the chain of thinking and making that easier to get to that.
Yeah, let's ask DeepThink for a list of those differences. So here you go, searching the web, found 30 results. I'm not even sure what search engine it uses there. This is interesting, because if it is using Google, which it could be, maybe, then that would also give it a leg up, for example, because ChatGPT still uses Bing, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but that's a feeling that sometimes. Okay, so it's taking a little longer to generate an answer.
Yeah, it's the speed of DeepSeek has been going down pretty rapidly. But yeah, the whole world's now diving onto it, so yeah.
Exactly, because last week it was super, super fast, and now it's getting significantly slower, especially at certain time frames. And I think you might be right. I think, it's just high traffic. Yeah. Oh, let's give it one more go. Here we go. Thinking. So here you can see how it's thinking, like we discussed before.
Wow, it's explaining each and every web page that it's using.
Yeah. Here we go. Okay, so mixture of experts, DeepSeek, 37 billion parameters per token out of 671 billion total. See, this is not really giving me an easy to read comparison.
No.
See, this is the thing I dislike about it. So 0, 1 from OpenAI gives you very short, clear answers. And 1 has the same nasty, so it does these comparisons, but it has this tendency to come up with these super long answers.
Well, they
well,
have a
here's
nice
an
summary.
over-
Let's see.
Here's a summary. Yeah. So training approach, RL driven. Yeah. Okay. So this doesn't tell us much. 1/30 of OpenAI's API cost.
Yeah.
Is not what I was looking for. But anyway, but I could ask follow-up questions. But let's not do that.
Let's learn more over time and then get back to it. Maybe it's a good moment to pivot to another topic. Yep. So I know that there was another agent revealed, the one from Perplexity. And this time it was first released on Android. So there you go.
Yeah,
And
so-
I assume you have played with it.
Yeah. So it's You said it's an agent. I have played with it for sure.
Well,
I can show you.
they put it. They promoted it an agent.
Yeah, so basically, you can't put ChatGPT as your default assistant on an Android phone, but now you can put Perplexity as a default agent. So you can't use a wake word. So let's see what happens. Hey, Google. See, nothing happens. My television probably responded. But I can do this, and then you see Perplexity. Hey, Perplexity, can you tell us a little bit about your new Android feature where it allows me to set you as the default agent?
Perplexity has launched the Perplexity Assistant for Android, allowing you to set it as your default assistant. It handles multi-step tasks like booking rides, setting reminders, drafting emails, and even using your camera for contextual tasks like finding nearby restaurants. Accessible through the Perplexity app, it integrates with apps like Spotify, YouTube, and Uber. To activate it, update the app via the...
So I'm just going to press stop here, and I'm going to show this. So what you see, this is actually what you get to see on your phone when you ask it something, right? And this is a feature that I really love. So it gives you a Perplexity kind of interface answer where you can read along with what it says. So that's one of the things I like. It also gives you all the sources. So the interface is far superior to Gemini in my personal experience. Or, you can't use ChatGPT. And then if you click on sources, it goes into the Perplexity app. And you get the traditional Perplexity stuff. So I think that all of that's really great, right? Because when I was using Gemini, I don't know if people did that, but if you quickly use it with the wake word, you'd only get this small kind of box here at the bottom with a button and nothing much else. And then when you really went to the Gemini, you get a screen that's basically all blank with just a little blue color. And I'm like, why are they making the screen so useless, right? I mean, yes, voice interaction is nice if I'm not looking at it, but why not provide contextual data there? And Perplexity does that so well.
And
so all in all,
the summary that you just gave, that the Perplexity themselves gave, was it also has a computer vision. So meaning you could use it to, for instance, watch you play a game, watch along, talk to it, and ask advice real time while you're playing a game about certain characters. Is that something it could do?
Well, if it could see on the phone?
Yeah.
Well, yes and no, because you'd have to open the default assistant and then that will overlay the screen. Right. So you can ask it a question about something on your screen if you're browsing, but if you're gaming, it would interfere with your gaming.
Yeah.
So
okay. Have to wait a little bit.
Just to give you an idea, because here's an old Android phone, and you can see this is Bitcoin going down on a cliff this morning. Hey Google, see this is. Hey Gemini, can you tell us why you're not showing me any contextual information?
There are a few reasons why Gemini might not be showing you contextual information. Limited context window. Gemini has a memory limit, and if the conversation is long or complex...
So I do think that I'm just going to stop this right here. So what you see is I did get some text, but you don't get the links and the sources. You don't get any images. I do prefer the voice of Gemini, which is far more natural and human. But the Gemini model, and this is the other thing, the Gemini model is still really bad. I'm not going to lie. It's still 1.5, even though Gemini 2.0 is available. You don't get that when you're using the voice assistant on the phone. And so the only real benefit that using Gemini gives right now is the voice-activated wake word, which is actually something that I tweeted out on the first day to the Perplexity team. I said, can you guys please look into getting a wake word in there, because that would make it really good. So personally, I've been enjoying it, using it. It's very good.
Cool. Now then...
Oh, and it interacts really well with apps. That's another thing. Gemini sucks at interacting with your phone. If you ask Gemini to open Spotify, it just doesn't do it. There's always an error. When I use Perplexity and I ask it to play Spotify on my phone, let's try it. I'm gonna fail, of
Just
course.
try it
That's
out.
always what
That's
happens.
interesting because
But,
Siri is not doing that either.
Hey Perplexity, can you open Spotify and play the Doom soundtrack? Hellwalker. Oh no, what's it doing? It's thinking.
Well, yeah, it's coming.
Soundtrack. Hellwalker on Spotify.
Oh yeah, it's working. See, so it works. I had to, and the funny thing is, I don't know if you can see this, but at the bottom there's a button that says Open Spotify, but it's basically playing Spotify in the Perplexity window. And this is what I had to agree to. I think I did it before, but maybe there was an update or something. So the first time you use things, you might have to agree to something, but then it just works. So again, I have to say
kudos to Perplexity for getting that working, because Siri is not even doing that, right? If you ask Siri to play it, always comes back to Apple Music. It never starts anything significant on Spotify. Yeah.
Who's Siri? Is this, what's this?
That's my old assistant. Yeah.
Hey Tim, we're getting some real 20th century, 21st century technology from Apple again. Hello?
Is Tim even involved in the Stargate project, or is he not even allowed to participate?
I think he's not really officially part of that. And I think if you watch the inauguration of Trump, I mean, everybody's been going on about how all the tech moguls were there. But we're going off track here, by the way, but did you notice that everybody is being up in arms about all the tech moguls, but everybody's talking about Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg? Do you know who nobody is talking about? Literally nobody? Tim Cook. Like,
who?
Nobody even mentioned him. Nobody cares about him. None of the posts online are about him. Literally, I saw one photo of Tim Cook at the inauguration, and he looked so grumpy. He looked super grumpy. You could tell from his face, he was like, yeah, I don't matter. Like, nobody cares about me. Nobody's even talking to me. Anyway,
let's go a little bit into Stargate, because I want to pick your brain as well, what you think about that. $500 billion set aside. They want to strengthen the US position in AI development. Yeah, surely that is happening, right? But they also say it promotes economic growth and job creation. Well, will it be job creation? Or I don't think they will create some jobs, but if you go all in on AI, it's not going to be job creation. Let's call it what it is. Then you have to have something in plan for universal basic income, right?
Well, yes and no. I mean, of course, we've predicted in this newsletter multiple times, and I keep saying it, a very aggressive timeline on how AI and robotics will impact the job market. Sure. 2030, we're looking at 50% unemployment at this point. I mean, the University of Amsterdam released a press release on the 8th of January, which is also in my article, where they speak about up to 70% unemployment as a result of AI and robotics by 2030. So that's super aggressive. However, they've announced a $500 billion project, and a lot of that will, in the first 5 years, or in the first 2-3 years, will mean construction, right? Because I think Sam Altman, so Elon Musk said, oh, you guys don't have the money. He tweeted this out. They started this little childish, Twitter.
All these big
oligarchs.
My God, they don't have the money. I'm good for my 80 billion.
Yeah.
It's entertaining, at least. That is.
It's entertaining. And of course, I think it doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately, I think it's even preferable, right? Because generally speaking, when governments do projects like this, they have a tendency to announce that the project is going to cost so many billions, and then it turns out they go over budget by like 3x or 4x in the years past, and then they need to explain that to the taxpayer. So them going big from the get-go, even if they don't have the money yet, I like that. And I think Elon Musk is just being childish for arguing over that. But the fact is that Sam Altman's response was, we're already having our first site set up where we're starting construction, like literally this week or something.
Yeah.
So robots are going to come, and they're going to come rapidly, but it's going to be an exponential scale, right? We'll have 2 robots this year. We'll have 100 robots next year, 1,000 robots a year after, 100,000 a year after, 1 million after that, and then we'll suddenly be at 10 million or 100 million in 2030. It's going to go really rapidly like that, right? So that means that in the next few years, to do all these construction of these infrastructural projects, whether it be data centers, whether it be power plants, a lot of human labor will be required. And I think that that's also what Trump is betting on, right? By doing this, he is literally employing Keynesian economics, right? The Keynes, the famous economist Keynes, said that if you want to stimulate an economy, you have to invest from the government has to invest so that you create job opportunity. And that's literally what he's doing here. So in that sense, it's really smart. And the smartest part about it is that he's using money from the big tech companies that can afford it to pump that into the US economy. So from that aspect, it's very smart. Another aspect we need to take into account is that it's also the announcement of a second Cold War.
Right. Yeah. It is. The arms race is fully on. It's fully on. Yeah. Yeah.
This is Trump saying, bring it on, motherfuckers. China, we're going to build the number one infrastructure. It's basically like, in a way, somebody sent me a message this week. I think it was Herbert. He said, it's like the Manhattan Project all over. But this time, it's like they're literally announcing it to the world. Like, okay, we're going to go for building the newest superpower in the world or super technology in the world. And we're going to try to get there first. And they're just announcing that. I don't know if it's completely comparable to the Manhattan Project, but at the very least, it's comparable to the space race. Right, where China and the US, Russia and the US tried to get to the moon first, and now we're trying to get to AGI and superintelligence first. That's what's happening, and I think that's a very relevant development, and it again brings with it a lot of existential risk.
Yep.
But if we look at the space race and the impact it has had on human technology and standards of living, it's incredible. Because a lot of people say, well, why are we trying to go to Mars and stuff like that? And I've always been defending that as well. Because what we see when we look at these kind of races or these kind of frontier goals, that there's a massive amount of spin-off, right? There's 1,000 different technologies that will be developed as a result of this. Because if you're trying to build an infrastructure for AGI, for example, maybe you want to connect all the data centers by fiberglass, but then you want the fiberglass to be the fastest fiberglass possible. So maybe they're going to be integrating the quantum entanglement kind of communication technologies, right? And all of this stuff is all spin-off that creates incredible developments for the world and potential other applications that we're not aware of right now. So I think in that sense, it can be really good, but we'll have to see what we get from that in Europe because we're stuck in the middle again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, little to add here, Aragorn. I totally agree with what you just said. Anything more about interesting that we can distill from the Stargate project? Because I think you narrowed it down, right? Also the conclusion, what do you do here in Europe? Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Focus on open source, maybe. Understand that you have the resources internally to benefit from all these models and all this intelligence as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's two things I can still add to this conversation. One is, and you said it, I said it. It's going to be interesting to see what will be the result for Europe because America is going in a more protectionist kind of era now. Trump is really, really pushing that. China has always been kind of turned inward. It invests a lot externally and it does a lot externally, but not like the US. So where's Europe going to end up? That's a question I can't answer yet. But right now, I'm not fully optimistic about it. I think it's not good what's going on for us. Then the second part is that I wrote an article a year ago about the fact that I was convinced that the United States would see a civil war erupt and that the United States would fall apart within, a decade. And for the first time now, I think that they might actually stand a chance of not going down that route. And it's crazy to think that Trump is the one that made that possible. Because I thought Trump would be a catalyst of discourse, a catalyst of conflict, a catalyst of polarization. But because of how hard he's clamping down on a lot of the things that I consider to be very important catalysts of discord and polarization, right? He's clamping down on the conflicts in Gaza, Ukraine. He's clamping down on gender ideology and how that's perpetuating society. And now he's also starting a project that will create job opportunity. He's embracing crypto. He's embracing AI. He's doing a lot of stuff. He stepped out of the Paris Climate Accords, which is horrible, but he's doing a lot of stuff that I think, whatever you think, even, forget about how you feel about it. It does serve to kind of limit the possibility for discord and polarization, and it creates opportunity for improving things in the United States and in their economy for everybody, not just for the super rich. We'll have to see if it really comes to pass that way. But I think he made a lot of good decisions that will actually limit the risk of the United States going into or progressing further into chaos and polarization. So
Yeah, let's see how that plays out over the course of this year. Hey, let's wrap it up with some book reviews. You did some reading as well, I understand. Lifespan.
yeah, I wish you could read more. But I've been reading Lifespan by Dr. David Sinclair. And although this is not about AI, and AI is hardly mentioned in the book, it is mentioned a few times. At some point, he says, a lot of the progress we're making is, of course, due to better technology and artificial intelligence. It doesn't particularly go on about AI, but he is making a very, and of course, been saying this for a while, and people always laugh at me when I say, you and me, we're going to be 500 years old, and we're going to discuss all of this in a few centuries. And people don't take that serious. But this book, David Sinclair really explains all the progress that's been made in longevity science over the last decade, which is far beyond what anybody ever hoped or expected. And he basically, he's more conservative than me. Right. So he kind of, you can tell that he's kind of limiting his own expectations, because sometimes he says things in the book like, I can't wait to still be doing research with 70 years of experience. But he's already 50. Right. So if that happens, that would mean that he is 140 or 150. And then, but when he actually talks about what he expects, he says, well, it's very likely that the first person to become 150 is already alive today, which is basically a step back from that earlier statement, right? So you can tell that he's far more optimistic than he's officially pushing in the book. And that's much more in line with my own expectations of the exponential progress. But he makes a really clear case that the science for completely halting and reversing aging is here. Yeah. It is clear. It's just a matter of turning it into a medicine. And the impact of that on the global economy, that's something that he goes into. I don't agree with his view because he completely ignores AI and robotics. He doesn't take any of that into account because he doesn't really have a good picture of it.
What is the release date of the book? When is it written?
It's just been released.
It
was released in 2024. Yeah, and what he did is, it's very cool because he said the field is going so fast that a lot of the stuff that he wanted in the book, a lot of stuff happened between him writing the book with the co-writer and then releasing it. So he put podcast episodes of a few minutes in between where he gives an update on the latest state of things because I'm listening to the audiobook.
It's super fascinating. So the book that I read is Co-Intelligence from Ethan Mollick. And it's interesting because we always give books away at our dinners, right? And looking for the latest and the greatest, usually we do The Coming Wave for 2041. This is a group of people that has come before, so we think of a new book. But books get really old. Some of these books are not relevant anymore. Some of them are good, like The Singularity is Near, which is still interesting to read, right? It's a book in 2003 and it's still relevant. But a lot of them are not relevant anymore. This one is relevant at this point in time. I do think that if you have this in your hand in 2 years, it won't be relevant anymore. But if you want a good guide, an easy to read, it's almost 180 pages, it's a large character type, it really walks you through what AI is. There are some nice examples, and it goes in a structure where it basically says, how can AI be creative? How can AI be your coworker? How can it be your tutor? How can it be your coach? That's how he segmented the book and takes people that are not as deep in AI as we are by the hand. So if you want to catch up quickly by reading one book, it's a very good fit. Also, this guy is interesting to follow on X. You follow him as well. I think he's got great content that we use, so it's definitely a good recommendation. And I like the cover. Yep. Are we eating the apple out of the garden or not? That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, his chapter on creativity is fun. He has a couple of interesting examples there. One is that he has, how does he call it? The test how many things you can do with a object. So in there is the paperclip object. This is something that I've been using in workshops quite a lot, right? To get the creativity going. You ask the group, so here you have a paperclip, come up with use cases. And people that say that AI is not creative, well, think again, right? Because if you do that in a group with humans, 10 humans, they come up with like 50 cases in an hour, and everybody goes like, yeah, 50 cases. But if AI comes up with 1,500 cases in 10 seconds, and most of the things that we don't even think of what you can do with a paperclip. So I'll write a more extensive review. I still have to do it, but it's a nice one.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I can't help think the skeptics of AI will answer to that, it's not creative. It was trained on data that contains 1,500 ways to use a paperclip.
No,
It's just
yeah,
a
yeah,
stochastic parrot.
and he,
but it's, I mean,
he kind of goes against that as well, and he explains that pretty well. He used the example of remixing ideas, which is a large language model can pretty well
that is
do.
creativity.
That is what's happening,
Yeah.
and that's how we
That
do
is
it as well,
creativity.
right? Magicians are doing it all the
Exactly.
time. You take a soul record from here, you take a drum computer, you mix it, you have a new record. That's how we combine things. He has the example of the Wright brothers for that do flight. They saw a bicycle and they saw wings. Hey, let's combine it
Yeah.
together and you have a plane. And AI
wonderful,
can do
yeah.
that perfectly well. So that's a great example of how he explains that AI can be creative. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's a perfect explanation. That's also the way I look at it. Awesome. Man, it always goes so incredibly fast. Patrick, thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. It was fun
every-
discussing this. I'm looking forward to tonight, repeating it again for Salesforce. And
Yeah, I'm going to spend some time on finalizing my talk for tonight. For now, everybody watching, listening, reading, I hope you enjoyed our 2 weekly innovation newsletter. Make sure to sign up, of course, if you haven't already. If you have already, make sure to send this to one of your friends that should really be a subscriber. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Help us grow the channel. Help us grow our reach so that we can have more people enjoy our wonderful bi-weekly talks about the progress of artificial intelligence and technology. That's it for now. And like they say in the Netherlands,
see you later.
see you later.
Bridging the gap of exponential growth. Patrick and Aragorn share the truth. Join our community, let's innovate. With Innovation Network, create a brighter